and to address the question, what do you see as the most important issues facing the community and Hastings Sunrise? And, if elected, what will you do to address this? We will call you in order. Please note that those running for City Council are seated on the left, and those running for Park Board Commissioners are to the right with the green placards. We will keep timing to very strict limits. Candidates, you may use up to the allotted time, but no more. A timer countdown will be posted on the PowerPoint screen to signal your time. So please also keep an eye on that so that you can wrap up within the allotted time. If you continue to speak after the 3-minute countdown, your microphone will be turned off and we will move on to the next speaker. We will also ask the audience to hold any applause until after all the candidates have spoken so that we can use the time efficiently and give as much speaking opportunity as possible. After we complete all candidates' opening statements, we will move to the second portion of the evening, which is a question and answer format. Community members from the floor will have the opportunity to ask candidates questions with a duration of up to 1 minute, and the candidates will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Audience, if you have questions or would like to formulate them in advance, there are note cards and pens at the table at the front provided, and I will provide additional details prior to that portion. So we will now begin with the candidates' self-introductions and statements and to answer the question posed. We will now start with candidate Mr. Diego Cardona of Vision. Thank you. You can pass the microphone down.
Thank you very much, folks, and thank you very much for coming. And it is a pleasure to be able to join you here in an ancestral and unceded Coast Salish territory. My name is Diego Cardona, as you heard, and I'm running with Vision Vancouver, and I'm running for very basic reasons. I'm a young person. We have the highest influx of young people in the country, and I feel they need representation. I'm a renter who's been evicted many times, and we need more renters on council, because currently we have, well, we've had one for a long time, and Hector Bremer joined us last year. And because I really care about our city, and I think we have big challenges and big opportunities ahead of us. But I really want to focus on this neighborhood and the question that we were posed ahead of time. And that was, what are the biggest issues faced in this neighborhood? And I thought, I know there's basic ones that I know that are rooted in this neighborhood. That the Adenac overpass closure is a big one. I want to acknowledge the concerns. I want to acknowledge the frustration that people have. I know that there is a consultation process going on as we speak, and that there will be recommendations presented to council in early 2019. And I hope that we can all come down to a solution that is rooted in the priority that I think for all of us in this room, and that is to ensure neighborhood safety and mobility, to ensure the safety of children, to ensure the safety of our seniors, and a solution that is recognized and is rooted in the fact that we all understand that the problem is not the local traffic, that the problem and the challenge is the congestion generated by the traffic that's coming from outside the city. So you have my commitment on that I think we all want to get to a solution with those core principles in mind. I know the Hastings Park is a big topic over here. The city sees it as a premier legacy, as a landmark of the city, but we also understand that it has neighborhood value. We also understand that we have to balance some of its commercial use with the PNE with public access, and making sure that even its commercial use is accessible to people here on local incomes, on fixed budgets. I heard recently that one of the local high schools, Notre Dame High School, wants to build an outside stadium. And I know there is some neighborhood concerns around that. So my commitment is to follow up on that. I know people have been sent to the city manager's office, and then the city manager's office is sending people to the school board. So we gotta get clarity around that, because there's nothing worse than uncertainty when it comes to these issues. And as someone who very recently, until very recently, used to work in the community at Kiwasa Neighborhood House, managing programs for young people, indigenous young people, and single mothers. I don't know if folks know, but we have the biggest density of former youth in care and current youth in care in this neighborhood out of the entire city of Vancouver.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our next candidate, Mr. Rohana Razel. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to these unceded territories, and thank you for coming. My name is Rohan Razel. I'm running for office because I too have witnessed firsthand what goes on at the City Council. I've attended many a public hearing, which now Vision Vancouver wants to do away with, and I've had my say. But every single time, what I learned is that the city is not listening. There's a famous hashtag going around that was created by our candidate, Bretton Gregor, are you listening? Yesterday I was at a rally to show my support for people at Berkeley Tower who are being renovated. And it turns out the company who's doing the renovation, Reliance Properties, they donated $50,000 to Vision Vancouver, and it's a city who decided to renovate them, which is against the provincial law. They can't do that, but the city is going to do it anyway, because that's how it works. The city doesn't listen to us, the city doesn't listen to me. I was renovated in April. The city doesn't listen to you. The city listens to Ian Gillespie from Westbank, BD, Terry Hui. I can name all the developers. The city listens to the developers, not to the people. Okay. So that's why I'm running. It's time that the city listen to the people again. And with regards to issues facing this neighborhood, I know about the Adnak overpass. And again, this all boils down to one thing. The city does not listen to you. You have signed a petition. You have had talks with the city manager. Did you get a response? Did the city ever acknowledge your concerns? No. The same goes to the raceway. I know that the citizens here have raised their concerns, and those concerns have fallen on deaf ears. And this is happening over and over again. And this is not just in Hastings Sunrise. Every community event I attend, I get the same feedback. The city is not listening. The city is not listening to the communities. The city is not listening to families. The city is not listening to the neighborhoods. That has got to change. We have to return power to the people. The city should be listening to you. If I'm elected, you are going to be my bosses. All of you. I listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the next candidate, Dr. Hanley L. Reyes. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me today. I would like to give you a brief background about myself. I have a doctorate degree in environmental engineering and extensive education and experience with mental health and addictions. I have taught engineering at university in the US and Canada, and as a consulting engineer, I worked for 25 years helping cities in North America, including the city of Vancouver, which I am very aware of the issues we're facing here. My second passion, besides engineering, is mental wellness. In the past 13 years, I helped thousands of British Columbians who suffer from mental illness and addictions. My charity offers the best program available for depression and anxiety, and I fund it fully out of my own pocket. I don't get money from government or corporations because this is my passion and my purpose in service. Today, I am running as an independent because to be your voice at the City Hall I have to be free from parties' ideologies or special interests that control the city. I am campaigning for an affordable, livable, drug addiction-free city. Drug addiction-free city. And it is unfortunately the city has failed in the past 15 years in dealing with drug addiction. And I would like to kind of lead and be a pioneer in a drug addiction elimination plan. And to show you my commitment, if elected, I will donate 50% of my salary to this plan to show that my heart is into it. And I would love to be a service to the city. My name is Hamdi Al-Rais, E-L-R-A-Y-E-S. It is the 33rd name in the list, and the only name that has hyphen in it. Okay. So I would please vote for me. I promise you I will be voiced at the City Hall. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to Melissa DiGenova.
Thank you very much. My name is Melissa DiGenova, and I'm currently elected to City Council. I'm running for re-election with the Vancouver NPA, and I'd like to acknowledge some of my fellow candidates who are here, Lisa Dominato, who's running for City Council, and Anne-Marie Copping, who's running for Park Board. I'd like to start by answering your question. What is the biggest issue or the most important issue facing Hastings Sunrise? And it really does tie into the reason that I'm running for re-election to City Council, and that's affordability. Affordability in our city, I think, drives everything. Most of the problems that we deal with, everything from our green space to our ability to be able to be here in this community center this evening, to the ability to be able to be a resident of Vancouver, which I'm very privileged to be. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was the only new councillor elected in the last term to Vancouver City Council, and I bring with me housing experience from working in real estate development for nonprofits. So I build housing for people at $375 a month. One of our candidates here spoke about rent for people in the city of Vancouver and how hard it is. Imagine you were in a wheelchair and you needed accessible housing on top of that, and you only had $375 a month to live on. So there certainly is some issues, and it was shocking to me that there wasn't a single city councillor that had any experience in housing or real estate development, but they were taking care of all of your city issues. So it inspired me to run, and while I've been at council, I usually get 1 out of 10 motions passed, but I've gotten a few through, and one of those was affordable home ownership, so I'd like to see that happen. I also think that that spins into rentals. I only have a few minutes here, but I also think that childcare is a huge issue, and I put forward recently a motion that passed and was referred to the next city council to expedite fees and to make sure we streamline processes for childcare. Right now, childcare spaces, they have to pay $46,900 just for the city of Vancouver to stamp their paperwork. That's not making things more affordable. Public consultation and engagement, another candidate mentioned it, and I heard it with my own ears. Raymond Louie, Vision City Councillor, said that, looking back, doing away with public hearings and maybe not hearing from the people might be a good thing. And that shocks and concerns me, because that's a chance for people to come to us. That being said, I think we need to engage people more. Some people just simply can't get to City Hall. They can't take a whole evening or 2 days off to get to us. So I think that it's really important that we make sure that we're out in the communities, engaging people, and seeing how it is that we can engage those people who might not be able to secure childcare or get time off from work to join us at City Hall. I'm also the liaison for Hastings Sunrise at City Council.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Listen, there's a lot more I could say. Hopefully I will through the questions tonight.
Thank you. I apologize. We had planned on having a warning bell, but we had a bit of a technical malfunction. But thank you. We will move on to Erin Shum.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Hastings Board for hosting this event and all the volunteers that helped with this event. My name is Erin Shum. I'm running for Vancouver City Council. I'm currently a Park Board Commissioner, and I am also the Liaison Commissioner to Hastings. I'm very grateful to be here because I want to build a Vancouver for families, and that means looking at childcare, seniors care, safe streets, and complete communities. Childcare, I want to look at building more spaces, creating more spaces, expediting permits for childcare. For seniors care, look at building a senior center in South Vancouver. We only have one currently on the east side of Cambie, and we're looking forward to working with council and mayor to build another one. Looking at safe streets, going back to basics, taking care of our streets, our community, picking up the garbage, removing the snow. Two are the basics. We've forgotten that taking care of our community. So I want to make sure we can do that. And the last one is building complete communities, looking at housing that's creative, that supports intergenerational people. So that's my platform. But what I'm really concerned, what I've heard over the years, is peony. We have no transparency at peony. If elected, I will work with all my council candidates, park board, to ensure that there's transparency at peony, that you can go to the meetings, that you can be heard, that you can send an email and you'll get a response. And to make sure that we have a park board liaison back at peony board. And second of all, Templeton Pool. I know there's been issues about decommissioning, and I stood up in front of the Hastings board and let everyone know that this is a neighborhood pool that we need to maintain and operate. So I put forward an amendment to make sure that we support the maintenance of Templeton Pool so that seniors, young families, children can all have access to their neighborhood pool where they can exercise and socially engage. So I'm hoping I can count on your support. We'll work really hard to ensure that this neighborhood is somewhere that we can talk to. And I appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you. We will now move on to Ms. Jean Swanson.
Hi everybody, I'm Jean Swanson. I'm running for council with COPE, and I'm here with Gwen Giesbrecht, who's one of our Parks Board candidates. I want to start by acknowledging that we're on the unceded stolen territory of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh, and thank them so much for taking care of this land for so many millennia. I live in this hood in the Adnak Co-op I've lived here since 1989. I swim at the Templeton Pool, don't close it. I do osteofit here at this center. And over the last 40 years, I've worked mostly to get governments to reduce poverty and homelessness and build housing that low-income people can afford. And for the last decade or so, I've been hanging out in the downtown east side volunteering to work for housing, stopping gentrification, and trying to reduce poverty. And I've been involved with the city a lot on a couple of area planning committees. I'm always up there bugging them about something. So I think the most important issue facing people in Hastings Sunrise is affordability, especially housing. A lot of people are signing our COPE rent-freeze petition in this neighborhood because I think even though they're not in housing insecurity too much, I think the people in this neighborhood are kind people. And I know a lot of people, and I'm going door to door, are grabbing our petition for a rent freeze and signing it and saying, a lot of them are adult kids who are still living at home with their parents and want to be able to move out but can't afford to. So COPE is working for a 4-year rent freeze to be reassessed at the end of that. But if we can't get the province to do it, we're saying the city should use all of its powers to do as much of it as it can. We're also saying, and this can be done, folks, in spite of what Vision didn't do, we're also saying we need to end homelessness. It can be done. Every homeless person on the street is costing you taxpayers $20,000 a year. If we put them in housing, you won't have to pay that. And, of course, homeless people have about half the life expectancy as other people, so that should be the real reason for housing them. So our plan is to get the upfront revenue with a mansion tax on houses worth over $5 million and use that to build modular housing in the first year. So we're going to have a great announcement next Tuesday with the COPE team about making the city truly affordable on many levels. Derek O'Keefe and Ann Roberts are running for council, Gwen Giesbrecht and John Irwin for park board, and Diana Day and Barb Perrick for school board. We're a great team. We want affordable community centers, affordable schools, affordable city, And I'll be so happy to talk with you later if you have any questions. Be happy to answer them. Affordable childcare for sure.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to David Wong.
Hi, Ishka, OCM. My name is David Wong. I'd like to acknowledge that we're in the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nations. I say that because these are the people my family was welcomed to over 150 years ago. I grew up in this neighborhood. I went to Templeton High School. I learned to swim in the Hastings swimming pool, and then was there for the opening of Templeton Pool. So this is my hood. So I get this area. That's who I am as an individual. As a professional, I'm an architect. For the last 25 years, I've been doing affordable housing around the world, and it works. I've worked in Singapore, New Zealand, Germany, in the US. What I've done for the last 15 years is I've been working with First Nation communities throughout the coastal nations to build affordable housing. We're training the youth there to learn to build their own homes. That's what we can do over here. It's actually give dignity back to the communities. Hastings Sunrise is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Vancouver. It's the most diverse, multicultural, has all these colors and flavors. It's a microcosm of what Vancouver is. It needs to be preserved. What's happening right now is we're losing this. We can't afford to lose this because it's an older neighborhood. We have a lot of older stock homes. A lot of these homes were built when there weren't all these strict regulations. That means many generations can live under one roof because this is a working class neighborhood. I don't get it when the city comes across and says, here's what's good for you guys. We're going to rezone this whole place, upzone it. What happens to the old housing stock? It gets demolished. What happens to people, the families that are living in these homes? They lose it. They get displaced. We need to keep the businesses alive here. They need to thrive. Their workers need to live in affordable homes. It's about affordable living. Vancouver Greens will make sure that we listen. We talk about engagement, but the Greens actually have it in their policy. Participatory democracy. I'm so proud to be with the Greens. And I got my colleagues, Pete Fry, that ran for council, Dave DeMere, Hartford, Camille Demont. My colleagues are second to none. And we run because we love our city. We don't get anything out of it, it comes from our heart. I ran with the Greens and I'm proud to be here to serve the community here. I was here last year too, by the way, I don't remember that. Vancouver Hastings, this is my hood, and I'll do everything to protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to Brandon Yan.
Thank you all for being here. I'm a newbie to politics, and I'm running because as a young person, as a person of color, as a queer person, and as someone who's had experience in the nonprofit world advocating for and collaborating with senior government for positive policy change for our youth in schools across BC, I thought it now an opportune time to step up and use those skills on city council. And in many ways, I kind of joke about this, but it's kind of a last-ditch effort to stay in the city. As a young person, I see day in and day out my friends move to Toronto. Not that the rent's better there, but the job market's better. I see friends move to Poco or New Westminster, which is now, quote-unquote, the Brooklyn of Vancouver. And I'm running with one city along with Christine Boyle for City Council, and we have three great school board trustee candidates as well. Carrie Bursick, who's currently on Vancouver School Board, who's fantastic. She's currently trying to tell parents that there is lead in their water, but the board voted against that motion and about notifying people, so it's in the media. Jennifer Reddy and Erica Jab. And I believe that One City's values are the things that informed our policies and our platforms around reconciliation, climate change, affordability, and those are the things I think that would move Vancouver into a kinder, more just city. And for me, what we need on October 20th is a mixed slate of progressive candidates to ensure that this city does work for everyone and not just a few folks. And I say that somewhat out of desperation, and also as someone who generally just wants to create a city that works for everyone. And so for what I've been hearing about Hastings Sunrise, yes, there's the ADNEC, the overpass, and There are problems with small business as well, not just in this neighborhood, but across the city. I live on the west side in Ypsilanti and 4th Avenue. There's lots of shops that are sitting empty, and they've been sitting empty for a long time. And so what I want to know from you folks, because I won't profess to know what your neighborhood is like or what it's like to live here, because I don't live here. But it's my job to take in the feedback I hear tonight and hopefully represent you on council as well. And what I hope, though, is that we are gearing towards a connected community. And so what I know about this neighborhood is that you are facing challenges because of the huge arterials that kind of divide your neighborhood, your community. And so how do we connect each part of your communities to each other in a way that's safe for our young people to walk to school, safe for people to cycle to where they need to get to, and also for folks who do need to drive. And so how do we ensure that that happens? And I also looked at on the website around the vision of this community, and do you know when the last time it was updated? It was 2002. I was 15. I think it's time to revisit that plan and revisit that vision and to see what Hastings Center is going to be in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you. So those are the city council candidates, and we will now move on to park board. We are calling up Dave Demaris.
Bonsoir à tous. What a pleasure to be here tonight. This is my very first all-candidate meeting, and that is because I'm a first-time candidate for the Green Party for park board. My name is Dave Demers. You could also call me number 2, second of your ballot on the party board, lucky me. David Wong pointed out to Camille Duvall and Pete Friday, colleagues of mine and friends of mine at the Green Party, 4 of us out of a slate of 10 to show here tonight to show our appreciation and commitment to this neighborhood. So who am I? I'm a total plant nerd. I got a very early start in life. Studied in New York and Seattle, in Montreal, traveled the world, ended up in Seattle for work, in a garden, which I specialized in for a while, and 12 years ago I moved here. Ever since I've worked in landscape, it's my own business, design, construction, and maintenance. So I know the city for, traveling through the city all day and all weekend. What do I see as the most pressing issues in this neighborhood? As Brendan mentioned, it's not my job to tell you what the most pressing issues are. It's your job to tell us what you want to see done. But at first sight, I see a few. There's the elephant in the room. There's Hastings Park, which we've been alongside the community advocating to have on the park board. You see greener to improve the transparency of its administration, and I would sure stand for this tradition that the Green Party has in this regard. As a gardener, I look outside and then I look at maps. The tree canopy is not great enough, it's not good enough in this neighborhood. When you compare with other neighborhoods, it's a much better average. I'm a big fan of trees, all the services they render and they give to the community. I would work for that for sure. Parks, it's the same. We have that objective of having you, all of you, within a 10-minute walk from parks, and there's big gaps in this neighborhood. I know these are big objectives, they're long-term objectives, lots of work, but I'm ready for it. Maybe one last detail, this place, this community center, very lively, lovely. Everyone needs more money, but I think this place can definitely use more than liquor paint, but a retrofit renovation. Really bring it up to speed with, so you can meet your needs and your aspirations. In a nutshell, this is what it is. As I said, lots of work ahead, and I'm ready. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to Gwen Giesbrecht. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thanks to Hastings Community Centre for hosting this event. It's a privilege to be here. All the acknowledgements that have been made this evening in regard to whose territory we're actually on, I concur with all of them, and I won't go through the list again. But what I would like to say is that as well as acknowledgements, there is much work that could be done through the Board of Parks and Recreation to ensure that within the public realm, through Indigenous-focused consultation toward reconciliation, that we have embedded in every public space, awareness and respect for the first keepers of the land that we are on. My name is Gwen Giesbrecht. John, Irwin, and I are the co-park board candidates, joining Jean Swanson, Derek O'Keefe, and Ann Roberts running for council, Barb Parent and Diana Day running for school board. We are 7 candidates who are working hard to keep up with our catch slogan, which is the city we need. The city we need demands attention to the housing crisis. A 4-year rent freeze and a mansion tax to support affordable housing will go a long way to stopping the city exodus. We must also ensure that as our city grows in size and density, the role of Park Board in providing services, green spaces, relevant programs that people can afford, and building resilient communities needs to remain strong. We have a remarkable thing here in Vancouver. We're meeting in one this evening, and that's community centers. They promote fitness and physical well-being. They also promote social, emotional well-being. They connect folks from diverse backgrounds, and they build resilient communities. There has been a lag in the acknowledged need for facility renewal. This needs to be made a priority. One of the important issues here in Hastings Sunrise, this facility was first tagged for renewal in 2011. So we need to get on board with keeping up with what we need in our facilities, particularly here in Hastings Sunrise. Swimming pools are in the news. They should be in the news. And I believe what we should be talking about is neighborhood pools, where kids learn to swim, adults can have exercise, and that they be located to be easily reached by a walk,
Thank you very
bike
much.
ride, or a short transit ride.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to Margaret Hogan. Thank you, and good evening. I'm Margaret Hogan. I'm running for Park Board under the Idea Vancouver banner, and I'll concur the acknowledgements that we are on unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And I'd also like to give a shout out to my running mate, Jamie Lee Hamilton. I think a few of you may have heard of her. And BK Anderson for school board. So a little about me. I'm an artist, I'm an activist, a writer, I'm a yoga instructor, a meditation teacher, and I'm a community activist. I've volunteered at AIDS Vancouver, at the Sage Community Food Bank, at Kiwassa Neighborhood House, and more recently I'm at Pace Society on the board of directors, where we help street-involved women. And I believe that community centers are essential for parks and recreation. We need a well-funded joint operating agreement, and the sunset clause needs to be eliminated. And of course, return Hastings Park to the people. And this isn't directly related to the neighborhood. I love this neighborhood, but we're also working to save Nelson Park, the only community park in the West End. Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to Leo Heba.
Hi, my name is Leo Heba, and I'm running for the Vancouver Park Board with, Victor Brenner and the amazing, Vancouver team. Thank you all for being here tonight, and like a few others, this is my first time. This is my first all candidates meeting, so I'm slightly nervous, but I started out deciding to try and run for the park board because I coach. I work at SFU, and then after I work, I go out and work with athletes, and I coach cheerleading. I've done it for quite a few times as starting out as an athlete myself, and then I went to coach high school volunteering, and now I coach a competitive team. It helped a lot with me personally, helped me get structure in university, and I see it every day when I coach these kids. They're all from different backgrounds, and no matter where they come from, they come to the floor, they come to practice, and they all work together. They leave their troubles behind, and it really helps them. And I've seen it turn quite a few kids' lives around. That's a passion that I have, and that's something that I really wanted to, I guess, bring to this race, and hopefully the park board. It's something that I care about, and I think a lot of people do, a lot of families care about it, and it really relates to community centers. I'd love to bring more sports and programs, athletics, and arts programs, and grow community centers, and that relates to one of the issues here. Personally, I won't tell you what is most important for you, but I would love to work with this community center and develop it and grow it and support it, or renovate it as well. Give it a big boost that I think it deserves. I think all community centers deserve it. I think it's something that I think brings communities together, and someone was talking about complete cities. That community centers are that core. They bring people together, they bring families together, they bring seniors together, it gives people opportunity to connect, it's inclusive. And that's kind of why, in short, I decided to run with it. I will be happy to answer questions after, but that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to Rick Carolyn.
Hi, I live in a neighborhood like this, actually just a little south of here in Renfrew Heights. And I understand that all parts of the city are densifying. It's just not as obvious here because you don't notice when you're driving around the streets, the laneway houses, the basement suites, and the fact that the population is increasing, but our green spaces, and it's been identified by Park Board that the east side of the city is really deficient in green space, and we need to add that. But it's expensive to buy the land. But we kind of have a solution across the street at Hastings Park. It's probably the most abused park in the entire system. It's a little known fact that Hastings Race Course is on a lease with the city, and that lease is up in December of next year. And I think that's a great opportunity to maybe move them off to greener pastures. I'm sure there's lots of space up there in the Fraser River Valley that would be perfect. It would give us an opportunity to not only have more green space and more naturalized space, but also the Park Board has identified a need for a world-class track and field facility in the city, and that, along with Empire Field, would be an ideal place to do that with plenty of room left over for a real park. Now, a little bit about myself. I have a degree in recreation administration, so I've got a really strong academic background to bring to the Park Board. I served on a whole bunch of volunteer boards, business associations, pride society, arts organizations. I've also been attending Park Board meetings for the last 2 years. I keep a notebook of all the meetings that I've attended and the issues that have come forward. So I'm not going into this blind. I've been listening to Park Board discussions. I've been going to City Council. I've been engaging with the various outreach on the, whether it's Van Splash or Van Play or On Water or all these programs. I've been going to those sessions. I've been learning what this job involves. I've also taken time to challenge some decisions at City Council. I spoke out against selling off those plots of land on the Upper Unis Greenway to CP Rail for $1. I spoke out against the city cutting the DCLs, the development cost levy portion that goes to Park Board, which has been chopped from 41% to 18%, money that can be going into renovating a building like this. Thank you.
So, as Joyce mentioned, my name is Shunin Shivji, and I am running with Vision Vancouver as a Park Board candidate. I want to first of all thank the Hastings Community Association for hosting tonight's event. I want to thank you all for being here. I also want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. A little bit about myself. I am a lawyer and a mediator and an owner of a small business. I have served on different nonprofit boards, and the most recent service for the past 7 years was as a director of the West Point Grey Community Association, which operates the West Point Grey Community Center jointly with the Park Board. And over the past 2.5 years, I was the president. In working with the Park Board, I was able to see that the presence of a testing. Just continue. Okay. So what I realized is that it's important that there be somebody on the park board that had some experience with the community center network. We have 24 community centers across the city. Each center serves between 2,500, at least 2,500 people. The registrants over 4 seasons can be 10,000 or more. So if you multiply that by 24 community centers, that's a lot of people that are served by community centers. You're looking at over 100,000 people. In my particular platform, I do believe that community engagement is absolutely crucial. As one of the presidents of the community centers, I found that to be very positive when the park board engaged with the community centers. The document, the joint operating agreement, that was the outcome was so much more richer when the community associations were engaged. So I do really believe that it's a win-win when the community is engaged. I think that in this particular neighborhood, in terms of the issues, you're looking at approximately 10,000 people increasing over the next 10 years, and I think that is going to result in a lot of pressure on this community center and community assets, and I think that equity would be very important. Removal of financial barriers is very important. Affordability of amenities is very important. And those are areas.
Thank you very much. Technical difficulties. We will now move on to Jennifer Young.
Good evening. I'm just going to talk about it because I think it's going easier than actually talking with it. Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you. Just because I'm sitting at the end, I thought I would stand up and say hello to all of you. I am a first-time candidate. My name is Jennifer Young, and I am running with Vancouver First. I'm really nervous, to be honest, so just bear with me. In terms of who I am, I'm an educated writer. I have 20 years of teaching experience, and there's some members in the audience that I have taught their children, and I understand what children need and what youth and family need as well. Also, with the party that I'm running with, part of the reason why I decided to join Vancouver First is because we are running a full slate of candidates with Fred Harding for mayor. Running a full slate to me is important because otherwise government can't function. Parks Board can't ask council for money, council will dictate, and nobody knows what's going on with each other, from Vancouver School Board to Parks Board to the council. So this way, in having a full slate together, we can govern as one body. Also, with my Parks Board team, I have Massimo Rossetti, who I know that Shannon also mentioned that she was Community Center Association president. He has also been one, as well as Jesse Jewell. And I have, we have with us Little Mountain Baseball, Chris Fuoco, who's also on our team, as well as Jesse Yogi Joel, who's a former Olympic athlete, and Ray Goldenchild, who was is the Youth Soccer Association president. These members form a team that understand what you, as a community, need from us. As Parks Board as well, I know that, as I'm learning, that the relationship between the Parks Board and the community associations has not been a happy one. And I think the importance is to bridge that relationship between the two, to run better programming for seniors, for children, and to ensure that everybody has access to these programs is really important. So from daycare spaces, and alongside, unfortunately, we couldn't have a council member, but to tell you about some of the issues that we see as a party from transportation, business, and everything that everyone has mentioned is also in our platform. So you can ask us questions. I'm sorry, I'm very anxious about this. So if you want to come up and ask any of us questions, Jesse's standing back there, Wade, Massimo, and Chris, and they form a team that is willing to work, that are ordinary people who are willing to work for you as a community to bring better government into the city of Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for all of your opening statements. We will now move on to the question and answer period. So this portion has been organized by community members to give other members a chance to voice their questions about the issues that matter to them. We respectfully request that other candidates who may be in the audience to refrain from asking questions until all community members have had a chance to ask. The format is as follows. Questions from the community will be taken from the microphones located in the audience. We ask that you line up and state your name and ask your question. You will have a maximum of 1 minute to ask your question, and similarly, this will be indicated on the screen countdown. We ask that you be respectful and treat the candidates fairly and use appropriate language. You can direct your question to a specific candidate or leave it open, and as moderator, I will select the next candidate to answer the question with the goal of providing equitable access and speaking time to candidates where possible. If there is a particular candidate that is receiving a disproportionate share of speaking time during the question and answer, I will redirect the question to another candidate or solicit another question to give the opportunity to all candidates. Audience members, please ensure that your questions are succinct and direct. If audience members come up to the question period to speechify, which refers to making a speech, rant, or focus on just stating their own opinions rather than solicit the candidate's answers or responses, the audience member will be asked to sit down and the microphone will be turned off. We do have the kill switch. and we will proceed to the next individual. For candidates, once the question is made from the floor, you will have up to 2 minutes to respond. You may use less time, but not more than the 2 minutes allotted. Again, we will ask for strict time, and you will see the time countdown on the screen. Again, if you continue to speak after the countdown, we will move on to the next speaker. Please note that we will end the questions as scheduled. I apologize in advance if there are additional questions and we do not have the opportunity to hear them all and raise forth. Unfortunately, we are limited to an amount of time. But what we do ask is, we have arranged to take down written questions on the note cards to the side, and we will post them on a community engagement board in the center. We encourage candidates to come and look at those questions in the following days, and also community members to come back and share and take a look and see what matters in this community. I trust that everyone is now familiar with the rules, and we will now proceed. You may take positions at the microphone. Okay. So please state your name and your question, and if indicated, to direct to which candidate is.
And we can ask one candidate.
Yes.
Okay. Well, my name is Sherry Bashirs, and as Joyce said, I'm the former president of Hastings Community Association. And thank you very much for all the candidates for coming. I worked hard organizing this meeting, and I'm glad to see a good turnout. I'm going to direct my question to Gwen Giesberg, because you, I think, were the one, if I was taking notes properly, that acknowledged that Hastings Community Centre was on the capital plan and was supposed to be rebuilt, and went through a whole planning process in 2010, 2011, and our position on the capital plan has basically been shelved. And other people did mention not the nicest things about the looks of our community center, but you know, we can accept that we do need a new community center. There is a design. It's sitting on a shelf somewhere in the, well, I guess on somebody's hard drive. And we feel it's time to come back to those plans and to take those seriously. So I'll ask Gwen, what concrete steps do you think could be taken to move that forward?
Thank you.
Thanks, that's a great question, Sherry. And as you know, my involvement at Britannia over the last 10 years as a board member and past president of that association board, although we are not a park board community center, I have been president of that board for 8 years, and we are getting going on a process of renewal there. And I'm sorry, you said you did your plan how long ago? 2011. Well, 2011 I think is when you were on the capital plan, but so, you know, here we are almost a decade down the road, and things change and communities change, and the priorities that might have been here in 2011 might not be the same priorities. So one of the things that came to my mind in terms of streamlining the process to get community centers into a renewal phase more expeditiously is to actually have an allocated amount, a budget line amount for centers that are in need of renewal, that there is an ongoing consultation process as part of their community center operations, so that when we do see these kind of gaps where you had a plan, it didn't go through, you know, now you kind of have to start again at ground zero to do the appropriate consultation that the city wants to see before they put money into your facility. I'm thinking it would be a good idea if community centers had the resources that they could keep an up-to-date consultation and information with their members, so that when the money does become available in the capital plan, it moves forward quickly. Specifically to your question, yes, Hastings should have been in the capital plan a long time ago. And we're at the point in the city where there aren't any facilities that are at the point of needing renewal, and we need to move on that.
Thank you. We will now take a question from the other side. Please state your name and your question.
Yeah, my name is Philip Ditchburn. I'm a resident. I live near Notre Dame School, just down the way there. And I'm going to direct my question to Melissa DiGiorno. So Notre Dame wants to build a football stadium right in our neighborhood without any public. Well, let me just say that it has a capacity for up to 2,000 people, and there hasn't been any. Well, it's a very long story. There was some input years ago, and we rejected the stadium, and they brought it back, and there's been no recent input. And they've gone to the city, and the planners have just said, yeah, that's just a small change. You can have the stadium. So we were feeling very shut out by both the school, where they won't talk to us, and the city planner just gives us boilerplate responses to our questions, and they're basically saying that's all done. We're not getting any more input. So we are still working towards that, and we would like some input. So my question to you is, what would you do to ensure that neighborhoods are involved in planning decisions that would affect the neighborhoods they're living in?
Thank you. Melissa?
Sure. I can try speaking loudly unless you want me to take the microphone. Thanks very much. And I think that this applies to not only the issue that you're talking about, but to many others. And that's what I said before about true public consultation and engagement. At City Hall right now, we have meetings and we'll hear speakers, and then we'll wait 2 weeks to make a decision. I'm not quite sure why. I usually only vote for that if it's in the best interest of having speakers come back at a better time. But again, I think we need better processes of public consultation and engagement. And that means we have to hear people. We have to come open-minded to these public hearings, to these consultations, and we need to listen to the public. And if there's a tough decision that needs to be made, sometimes we need to do something that I've tried to do several times. Usually I haven't had any success, which is to refer something. Refer that back to staff, or to wait to make a decision on that. In fact, I actually, myself and my NPA colleagues and a Green City Councillor walked out of a public hearing because we felt that we and the public were being disrespected in not being allowed to ask for more information that we needed. So what would I do? I would make sure that there's true public consultation engagement, which is a part of my platform, because I've seen people be stonewalled at City Hall, fill out a comment card that we'll never read. And I don't think that that's a way to engage people. We need to make sure that we engage people. Maybe that's an incentive that we at the city give people, like you, to be involved, and we need to listen to that, and we need to make sure that our staff understand that we need the community to lead our consultation. We also do need to go back to basic planning and to look at green space and what that green space will do, not just for a school, a private school, a public school, but for all people in the community. So I would like to see that too. I just quickly want to thank the Hastings Community Center Association and Sherry Brashears especially for organizing tonight.
We will now take a question from this side. Please state your name and your question.
My name is John Williams. This is open to anybody here, these candidates, whether you're in Parks Board or whether you're going to City Council. I'm going to focus in on the Adnac overpass because it's a big issue here. A lot of us feel trapped in our neighborhood and can't get in, can't get out. I'm actually part of the citizens of Adnac. We'd really like to see OPAC open to local traffic only. It's a rush hour problem. That's what it comes down to. In the city of Vancouver and its congestion management strategy of 2017 actually has some great ideas in there using permits, using technologies. Actually, they can do it right now and implement it. We don't understand why it's not going on. The traffic calming should be put in here. We need to reduce the speed. We start with right here, sorry. With safety for all the drivers, the cyclists, the pedestrians, the seniors, the children. It's all right there. It needs to be put in place right away. We have, and we also need to have collaboration with the residents in here. Right now it's been horrible. They've been withholding information. There's been no transparency. It's horrible here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Sorry.
Okay.
And anybody can take that.
I'm going to actually direct that to City Council because it is more of a traffic issue. And I will actually start with the first candidate that has not had a question, and that will be Diego. If you would like to take that question, or you may pass it on. Thank you.
to engage. And thank you very much for the question. And like I said in my intro, I completely acknowledge and empathize with the concerns and the frustration. And I think we're on the same page around this is not an issue of a local traffic. If anything, this is we have to aim towards a solution that is centered around how do we make sure that our local neighbors can use the Adenac overpass, and that is centered around mobility and safety, and the safety of children going to the local elementary schools, and our seniors taking the 27 bus. That has to be the focus. And I know that there is consultation going on at the moment. I know that folks are on board with that consultation process. And I hear you, and when the recommendations come forward in early 2019, I think that is the deadline and the timeline that we are aiming for, that it is something that reflects the neighborhood concerns and the neighborhood priorities. But I hear you loud and clear, it's got to be centered around what the neighborhood wants, and you definitely have my commitment on that.
Thank you. We will now take a question from the other side. Please state your name and the question, and if there's a specific candidate.
My name is Ellen Reardon. I'm a member of the board of the Hastings Community Association, and my question is for any of the Parks Board candidates. The city put forth in the Van/proposal a destination aquatic center with a plan to decommission smaller neighborhood pools, including our local pool, Templeton Park Pool, which hosts many widely popular athletic and recreational programs and clubs. It's integral to the fabric of our community, and many residents who use the facility, and specifically to the youngest and oldest residents who need a smaller facility next to their homes. Do you agree that smaller recreation facilities are important to the fabric of the community? And will you defend Templeton Pool specifically over a larger destination aquatic center?
Thank you. I will open that question to David Demers.
Thank you for the question. It's a question that comes up all the time. Every second question we get is about pools. I want to make it clear the report was made public. The report was deeply flawed. The report that was sent back to staff with a brief of changing it basically to address the concerns you've just expressed. We are committed, as the Green Party, we all agree on neighborhood first. Once those services, the needs of the community are taken care of, once the money is in place for maintenance, upgrades, and running the facilities themselves, then we can talk about other fancy branding facilities elsewhere. So personally, yes, 100%. It's community first and everything else after. So in terms of the pool, I'm with you.
Thank you. Next question. Please state your name and question.
Hello, my name is Jason McGarry. I'm on the Hastings Community Association as well, I'm the Vice President. And along the same line, I'd like to pose a question to Rick, since you've been going to meetings at the Park Board. With regards to the Van Splash strategy to eliminate small community pools and building destination pools, what will you put forth to save, enshrine, and enhance local community pools? So that's one question for Park Board, and I have one for City Hall, or City, sorry, David Wong. This is to do with the Adenac overpass as well. I know this is a kind of hot issue for the community. There's definitely tension between the needs of the residents of East Vancouver have safer streets and the desire of commuters from Burnaby and beyond to bypass the main arteries to get into the city as quickly as possible. What are your priorities? The commuters or the safety of Vancouver residential streets? And what's your plan in regards to this? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll allow that because you had two questions within 1 minute. Okay, we will start with Rick. Thank you.
I sat through that Park Board meeting when Van Splash came up on the agenda. And it's thanks to people like you, speaker after speaker, that were very passionate about both Lord Byng and Templeton, that things got deferred back to staff. My concern is that it's not scheduled to come back until after the election, and I'm willing to bet that staff and the proponents of that report are hoping that a brand new park board won't know this background and that they won't have time to learn about it because it'll be, one of the first things we'll be asked to address, and that it will get rubber stamped because the new park board doesn't know otherwise. Now, when the study was done, everything would seem to be reduced down to cost per swim. And that's why they wanted to build another mega pool in Connaught Park, because it's inexpensive to do the cost per swim with a mega pool. That doesn't meet neighborhood needs, that doesn't meet community needs. Whether it's just having a pool that's accessible, easy to get to in your neighborhood, or whether it's something beyond that. Templeton plays a very special role in terms of the unique communities that it serves, the trans community, Muslim women and children whose tradition is not to bathe together with men, all of those sorts of things. And Templeton's a very private pool. There are not a lot of windows, so people can have very private meets, special events, including the naturalist community. But the really thing that worries me so much about this report is that it was commissioned through an outside company, a company that happens to build mega pools. And that obviously is why we got the recommendation for Connaught and why everything was boiled down to cost per swim. I don't want to see this. I think it's an abomination.
Thank you. And the next question was for David Wong. Could you pass the microphone down?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I used to work in the engineering and planning departments for quite a while. This is back in the 80s. So what used to work at the city was the culture of excellence. I'm not saying that because I'm trying to prop it up. What's happened since is that they don't listen anymore. Everything's in silos. What used to happen in the past was that the engineering department, traffic, even the utility, the sewer, the water, and the planning department, they all come together. The heads of all the departments need to sit down and talk about it. More important, we engage with all the citizens. City Hall doesn't tell you what you want, you tell us what we want. That's what we want to bring back. The Greens will bring this back, this true consultation, full transparency, line items, everything there, we can see what's going on and see what really is in the best interest of the community. That's the first thing. But what we're asking right now is actually a symptom of the lack of foresight, the lack of vision for this area, not for all of Vancouver. We're densifying throughout the entire city without a real plan. This is what we're ending up with. People are moving out and moving in, and we're building all these towers, but yet there's nothing to accommodate the infrastructure and all these other important things that build a community. So what are we going to do? We're going to go back and say we need a proper plan, a citywide plan. We're also going to have a planning office that we will consult and engage with the community, get information back, and we're going to share it online so people can see all this stuff. And we'll get feedback. And we're going to also find out how much it really costs. The Greens will have a full, transparent, and full accountability. That's what we promise.
Thank you. We will now next question.
Hi, my name is Holly Pachano. I'm going to be a pain, and I'm also going to bring up the Adnac overpass. It's a pretty hot topic in our neighborhood, and for good reason. It's been incredibly divisive throughout the neighborhood. We all have very strong opinions on it, and I think a lot of people have touched on it so far. We've been really left out of the process, and it's been infuriating to many, many people. The fact of the matter is we're in a place now, the closure is in place, and regardless if you like it or not, we're trying to live with it. We're trying to get it enforced to make it safe for everybody because it's been an absolute nightmare. That being said, my personal question is, it was brought to my attention yesterday that Coalition Vancouver is planning to protest at the overpass on Monday. They apparently in their platform immediately want to remove the closure and open it to all traffic, which I assume includes commuter traffic. My question to Melissa, considering you are up for re-election, is, and I know you know personally about this because I've sent you numerous emails, you've been on threads with Ron LeClaire, with the Adnac page. Yeah, and so I guess my question is, I was trying to actually get an answer out of Penny yesterday when I was very abruptly hung up on.
Please state the question.
The question is, if elected, what is the immediate plan with the overpass, and is there going to be a plan to put in safety measures, including traffic?
Thank you. We'll move on.
Okay.
Melissa?
So just to answer that question, I think that we need to meet with the community, and I've suggested that to staff. I tried not to make this issue political because I know that I sit in opposition, and sometimes if you make an issue political, I only like to do that after I've given staff a chance to try and work through the process. In fact, sometimes I hope that I help Vision come up with those ideas so that, because then I know that that will work or that will pass. I think that we have to have a meeting with the community. I can tell you as a new mom to a 13-month-old daughter, I know what it's like to be scared walking with a stroller. I also know, though, that there are needs of the community, and if you stop the sort of rat running through one neighborhood, it might happen through another. So I think it's actually going to take an approach, which I understand staff had told me that they were working on. I'm hoping that it will come back after silly season is over so that we can actually, I'm not going to make you any promises because I hope to earn your vote, I hope to earn a seat, but I can tell you that just as I've stood up for Hastings Community Center Association when I was liaison here, I will stand up for you and your community. I live in Hastings Sunrise as well, and I think that the residents, just as other people have said, you are our bosses. So just as staff need to listen to city council, we need to listen to you. So it needs to be a collaborative approach where we can't ignore traffic. Traffic isn't going to go away. Closing roads down isn't going to go away. I can tell you that I've heard from people that closing off Alexander Street has made things more difficult for several other areas. So we need to look at the whole picture here. Are we going to create other problems? I'd like to see a collaborative approach where we look at maybe closures during certain times of the day, different approaches. Again, I look to our engineering staff, but they need to sit down and work with you. And if elected again, I will be at the table and I will sit down with you as well, if you'd like. Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Connie Bonsteel. I've got a question for Dennis. I'm also on the Community Association Board here. And we've been lucky enough that we've had Aaron Schoen being our representative for our liaison for the Parks Board over the last 3 years. And but she was one of the few people, a few commissioners who were actually communicated well with our board and worked hard to build a relationship. You said you would like to do that as well. I'm wondering what that looks like to you. What's your plan?
Just making sure. I must say to you that I've been struck by the increase in community engagement that the Park Board has been involved in since we've had a new director. I'm going to give a shout out to Donnie Rosa. I think she has done a particularly good job of recreating kind of goodwill with the community. I think the new JOA has some structure in it as to consultation vis-a-vis the Park Board policies, but I think there certainly is room for improvement. And I think, again, that would come from engagement with the community, but we've heard suggestions from having regular forums so that people can come and speak to them and know that, on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis, this is going to be a recurring venue, a recurring platform for the community to engage. I find that some community members are left out through the Vancouver surveys, online surveys, through town halls, through workshops, and there are other ways of engaging the community, and certainly open to suggestions on that, but that's certainly the direction that I'm going. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Okay, this is for Brandon. Notre Dame Private School has been given permission to build a 2,000 spectator football stadium in our neighborhood with no public consultation whatsoever. How will you ensure that the public are engaged in issues that will transform their communities like this? And how are you going to engage young queer people of color in politics?
Sure. Two questions. So the first one was around the stadium, which I actually just learned about, so this is new to me, but I think that for when it comes to any large development like this, especially as you mentioned, spaces for 2,000 spectators, is that correct? Thinking about how we holistically actually plan our city, and so that means looking at things like not just parking spaces, but actually are they communicating with TransLink? Is there going to be a commensurate increase in transit service? Is there going to be an increase in the amount of bike spaces for parking your bikes to the stadium? It's also a private school, and so for me that's been a point of contention for our school board candidates around the funding for private schools, that we think that actually that funding should be diverted into public schools as well, because private schools do get public funding as well. And so for me it's around how do we talk about these ideas around true consultation and true engagement. But there really is no such thing. But there are best practices. And so when it comes to neighborhood involvement, it's a long game process. And so how does City Hall, how do the planning departments actually ensure that people are engaged all along the way and not just at one point here or there? It's a long process, and I think that that's actually how we engage people over the long term at City Hall and with development. With regards to young people, folks of color, and queer folks, I mean, I would also say that when it comes to politics, if you look in the room, I don't think this room is necessarily representative of the city or maybe this neighborhood either, which is not a bad thing, but it's also meaning that there's a call for people to see themselves reflected in the leadership that we have in this region. And so for me, trying to answer that call, trying to engage folks in politics, because politics is personal. And it should be emotional, because we're trying to stay in the city. But how do we move those emotions into something productive that isn't just anger and fear, and something that actually builds on successes and actually moving the city towards direction, which I think works for everyone.
Thank you. Next question?
No speechifying, but full disclosure. My name is Stephen Nemes, and I'm one of the few independent candidates for Park Board Commissioner. And actually, a happier community audience than up there, because at this early stage of the campaign, I really want to listen and not to talk, because I think that's one of the problems, that the electorate is very, very upset about certain events. And I got one question for them, and they're told about the problems with the lack of public consultation. So my question is for Rohanna. Rohanna, please speak to me and to all of us here on whether City Hall has been listening for the last 10 years and how we can change that.
Thank you.
So I'll answer your question first. No, absolutely not. I know this because I have attended almost every public hearing for any major event. I was there at the mass rezoning public hearing, and you know what they did? They scheduled it at 3 p.m. on a work day. How people can attend that with our high rents, and you can't take a day off work, and the next day they try to get it at 11 o'clock in the morning. Yes, and thankfully Adrian Carr pushed back, and we got it at 1 o'clock, and I had to take time off from work, and there were, I think, 30-something people waiting to speak that day, and only about 15 people got there. A lot of my friends turned up at 6 o'clock, and by the time it was all over. And those are the tricks that they use to make sure that people's voices are heard. And now they have just come out in the open and said that they are going to do away with the public hearing process altogether. Because you know why? Because, I can't remember the exact word, but it's something along the lines of, they wanted to do away with public hearings for development, rezoning, everything that involves, making sure that the developers' voices are heard, but not the people's voices. The second part of your question, what we need to do is we need to go to the people. So what we have committed to is to have public hearings, not just public hearings, public consultations at the community centers. We have 23 of them, so if we do them, we do twice a year, we can still cover them in 1 year, right? So go to the people, and when you build a citywide plan, make sure the plan comes from the people, comes ground up. How can some guy sitting on 12th and Cambie know what's best for you? They can. The neighbors know what's best for the neighborhoods. And the neighbors' voices have been silenced. But if we go to the communities and if we get people to tell the people that we are listening, people will start speaking up again. And that's what we plan to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Donatella. And before I ask this question, I just want to say that you guys have all done great speeches tonight. And I really admire each and every one of you because it takes a lot of courage to be up here. And I just wanted to say that. This question is for Melissa. If you are re-elected, will you save the viaducts? If not, why not? And how will businesses downtown survive without transportation going into downtown? I know that's 3 questions, but...
Alright, so I am a sitting councilor right now. I'm a sitting city councilor. So I take an oath of office, and there's certain things that I can't share with the public until I completely share. What I can say is I think that I certainly, with as much time as I've been given, and when my microphone's not turned off at City Hall, I have been very critical of the process. What I can tell you is I'm concerned about emergency vehicles being able to get back and forth into downtown. We have Rogers Arena, we have BC Place. We will have a number of new housing units there. We have the new hospital that will be in the Falls Creek Flats area. How are we going to ensure with a natural disaster and emergency that emergency vehicles can get through there? Is this going to create more congestion or an issue or a problem? And how far are we in the process? I would call for us to ask the question of what is it going to cost us to stop this? If that's what the people want. I've heard people speak on both sides, for and against, and I think that there are good arguments there. Again, I've been very critical of the process. I think that it needs to be a process also what staff brought to us, and I spoke out about this, was certainly the fact that the park board is a big part of this. There's a park that runs through that, through the plans that we've been shown, and no one there from park board could speak for the commissioners, which was very concerning to me. I know that many people have taken an interest in this, and I'll give a shout out to independent candidate Rob McDowell, who also has been to many city council meetings because of this, but I think we do need true public engagement. Not 6 o'clock at City Hall, but we need to make sure that we're planning for the future of Vancouver. We're supposed to be planning for 100 years out. So if we're going to create bigger traffic issues, we need to look at that. That being said, everything ages out. If the viaducts are aging out, what are we going to do to make the situation better in Vancouver?
Thank you.
That's what I can tell you right now.
Please note, I would just like to unfortunately say that we are going to move on to other questions other than Melissa DiGenova because she's had some opportunity to speak there. So if the upcoming questions could direct them to other individuals. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
This is a question for City Council candidates. My name is Eileen Finn. I'm now in a co-op, but I was one of the majority, or was one of the more than 50% of Vancouverites who are renters, and like hundreds or thousands of Vancouverites, my family and I were illegally evicted. So what are your plans to preserve affordable rental apartments? Preserve, not 30 years in the future, for when ones that are being built now will be affordable. But what are your plans to preserve and protect renters that are being kicked out and forced out?
Thank you. Handy, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I feel for everybody who's renting today. I know a lot of people who are low income or income cannot afford the rent today to move out. My idea with housing is that we need to secure tenants who live in low rental housing. You're living in a place, there is a lot of tricks being played against the tenants. Demo eviction, I was listening to a downtown evicting people and to renovate, and it will take him 2.5 years. It is the purpose, it's a trick to throw them out and double or triple the rent. We need to make sure that if somebody is going to evict here, we need to make sure that they will provide you substitution to replace. Not giving you a compensation 2-3 months, even a year, doesn't make any sense when you're going to jump to double your rent or being displaced completely. It is very passionate subject for me because I have seen this happen. And unfortunately, again, I go back to special interest groups. The special interest groups are funding the elections. And then every dollar they pay in funding the election, they're getting power. And I challenge you for these numbers. It is we need to stop the influence of special interest group that takes over the people who are living here. So this is very, very important for us. The other thing is that we need to increase the inventory of rental properties. I kind of smile sometimes when somebody does affordable housing. What does affordable mean? Is it affordable, $1 million affordable? Or 5 million or 500? What's affordable? But increasing the inventory is really crucial for us.
Decrease rent.
Thank you. We ask that the audience please respect the process. Next question.
Hi, I have a question for Aaron Shum, and it goes back to my, I don't know, call it an obsession with the community center. And I'm asking you this question because you're coming out of being a park board commissioner and trying to become a city councilor. So I think you're familiar with the budgeting process, and I think part of the pressure that's been placed on the relationship between the park board and the community associations is financial stress, and I think that hasn't been good for the relationship. And I think there's constant downward pressure on the park board to reduce costs, and there's a lot of squeezing, and that the budget relative to the programs and the offerings is smaller year by year. So I'd like to hear your insight and your comments on what you think needs to happen at the council level to make sure that we have a properly funded recreational network.
Thank you for the question. It breaks my heart as a park board commissioner that I get comments and feedback from staff saying we don't have the dollars, we don't have the dollars. Well, I'm thinking in a city as rich as Vancouver, how can we not have dollars to maintain our community centers, maintain our parks, maintain our arenas, our swimming pools? So what I've learned at Park Board, I will make sure that as a city councilor, working with other councilors, mayor, that we commit dollars by hitting the reset button, looking at what we have in the actual budget, and then reallocating those dollars to where the needs are, where the community needs, what the community is asking for, and really go back to what we are here for. It's working for the community, working for you, working for the residents. We need to take care of our community first. We cannot allow the building to fall apart to the point of no return, and then we have to demolish it. We need to look at our dollars, where they are going, and really be logical and use common sense fixing our buildings and building buildings where it's necessary, renovating where it's necessary. So I know that it's going to be difficult to look at the budget and looking at buildings, but you have my word that I will work with everyone to ensure that we find some dollars where it's necessary, where the community has been out and recommending we do that. So I'll be listening, and I'll be taking those words that you put, and I will work on it and make sure that it's done. And I appreciate everybody for coming, because I know it's an evening with lots of candidates here, and we all want what's best for Vancouver, and that is to make sure that we take care of our residents.
Thank you. Next question.
My name is Frank Lino, and part of this is information for all of you people, because I bet most of you don't realize this. Vancouver does not own the Adirondack Overpass. That is jointly owned by the Federal Department of Infrastructure and the British Columbia Department of Highways. And I seriously wonder if Vancouver has the right to close it.
Could you please state your question specifically? Thank you. Would one of these city, would you like to respond to that topic?
I haven't looked into the legalities of it, but I do live in the Adnat co-op, and I have been doing a lot of research about what people think about the closure. And I know one thing, which is the co-op, which has 160 units, probably 300 residents at least, was not consulted about the closure, and that's bad and that's wrong, and I wouldn't participate in something like that if I were on council. I also know there's a lot of people that like the quietness of it, of having the closure, and there's a lot of people that are really angry about the extra time they have to take driving in order to get out of the co-op and out of the neighborhood, and people are angry that the neighborhood is split in half. And I know myself that I figure I have to drive an extra 20 blocks a day because of the closure when I drive. So I think that the solution that some of you guys have come up with, where it's closed just to out of neighborhood traffic, but neighborhood people can get to use it, I think that's a really good solution with traffic calming, so that the bike lane, the people that drive their bikes are safe. I think that's a really good idea too. And yeah, I think you guys have done the consultation that the city should have done, and you've come up with something that's probably a really good idea, and I think it would be good to try and implement.
Thank you. Next question?
Hi, I'm Marlo Franson, and I also work for the City Council. My question is for David Wong. How would you deal with the closure of the viaducts along down there on the east side? And where would you what would you do with the traffic, especially the ones that are going to go down Hastings Street? What were your ideas and plans for that?
Thank you for your question. See, one of the things that we don't really know right now, because there really hasn't been a proper study done with the community what the effects will be. So what the Greens will do is we'll go back and talk to staff. They're the experts on this. We'll consult all the different departments, because it's all siloed right now to communicate with each other. That's the first thing we're going to do. And all the communities that are affected, it's not just a Vancouver issue, it's going to be a regional issue. Because people coming from the metro area into downtown Vancouver. So we haven't seen this information. So to be completely honest, we don't really have an answer until we get the feedback from all the different stakeholders.
Thank you. Next question, and I would also, where possible, encourage some questions for Parks Board.
This one's for Parks Board. Joyce, you can decide who gets this question. My name is Greg Edgelow. I'm the Parks Commissioner with ProVancouver. I formerly worked with the Hastings, Templeton, and Britannic Community Center Association long ago. I live in East Van, and we've all heard of how the money's been dwindling to our parks and our facilities. I think we need a paradigm shift in the way City Council views the features and benefits and values of our parks and our facilities. So what the question is to you is, what is your strategy in ensuring that City Council and Mayor understands the features, the benefits, and the value to continue to fund our Parks Board, and as well that they view our Parks and Recreation as an investment and not an expense?
Thank you. I will direct this question to Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think it's very important to engage with City Council and to consider parks important for community building and green space, and also that there's the policy that we're supposed to have 2.5 acres of green space per 1,000 residents. So I'd like to engage with council to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Franco Petta. I'm running with Coalition Vancouver. For all the candidates for coming, but I don't think there's a fair representation of all the parties that are running. Should have been one person from each party to be fair to everybody.
Could you please state your question?
Yeah. None of you have mentioned that the budget has gone up to 61%. It's gone up from $700 million to $1.4 billion. And we're also $2 billion in the hole. And on the voting ballot is another 3 questions that are going to allow the city to spend another $300 million. They're trying to sneak through with the people, and not one of you has mentioned that. Like, you know, like, who wants to answer that? Because that's a very important question. Where's all the money going to come from? You can do all the promising, consulting, this and that. Where's the money all going to come from? Because all these people out here, every year, City Hall is pulling money out. Tell us how you're going to put money back into their pockets and improve their quality of life.
Thank you. I'm going to direct that question to Leo Heba, who, if you would like to answer, or if not, you may pass it on.
Sure. Where's the money coming from? We were talking about having a city plan and consultation. I think that's really important. When you are able to determine what is important for the city, for the community around you, you can allocate the money to that, disperse it accordingly. There's, I mean, right, cardboard, I can only talk from our perspective of what we want to do with cardboard and trying to get it more sustainable and work with our partners, trying to get more innovative ideas and trying to get things going in maybe not the same direction, but clean it up and get community competition that way. In terms of the city's overall budgets, all I can say is that our plan, with the councilors, is to look at the core review and look at how have a core review, have people look at the process of City Hall and how everything gets done there, try and get things moving faster and try and accomplish more with what we have rather than increase taxes or adjust things in a different way.
Thank you. Next question?
Hi, my name is Sandra. My question is for one of the finance. I noticed in the flyers tonight that you were talking about the mansion tax and the push to have people who own homes in over $5 million pay more. And I know that there's a lot of pushback from these people about how they can't afford it and don't want to leave it as a legacy. And I'm wondering what kind of ideas you have about how to convince them that they can afford to pay more and contribute more.
So COPE is proposing that we have a mansion tax, which is a progressive tax on property. You know, when you pay income tax, you pay one rate if you're a low-income person, a little bit higher if you're middle income, a little bit higher if you're rich. And the province and the feds get to keep income tax, but the city only has property tax, and property tax isn't progressive. It's one rate for everybody. If you have a $400,000 condo, it's the same rate as if you're Chip Wilson and you have a $75 million mansion. So what we're saying is we need a progressive property tax, which we're calling a mansion tax. And we're saying it would only apply to the value of mansions over $5 million. So if you have a $6 million mansion, you'd only pay the extra tax on $1 million of it. And we've crunched the numbers. It would apply to about 4,000 or 5,000 people in the city. Hardly any of them, none of them basically living on this side of Maine. And we could get enough money from that tax to literally build enough modular housing to house all of the people who have been counted as homeless in 1 year. We can do it. Thank you. And after that, we could use that money to build social and co-op housing for people who can't afford the high rents. 4,000 or 5,000 units a year. We can do that. And we'd be taxing the property appreciation from people that have a lot of money, that make the money by basically twiddling their thumbs. Like Chip Wilson, his mansion is worth $75 million. Between 2016 and 2017, it went up in property value by $13 million. We'd be taxing, with our proposal, maybe $1.5 million from him every year, but his property value keeps going up. If the property value goes down because of the tax, that's what we want, because that makes, we don't want it to go crashing down, but if it goes down a little bit, that's good, because it means housing will be cheaper. Rental housing will be cheaper. So that's the mansion tax, folks.
Next question.
My question is for Brandon. I'm just curious some of maybe your ideas or strategies you would look at in dealing with the opioid crisis within the city.
So with the opioid crisis, the overdose crisis, and where, I mean, truly it's actually a poisoned supply crisis, right? And so because an overdose is something you take too much of, but literally the supply is just poisoned at this point. So for us, it's around advocating for decriminalization of the use of substances so that folks can actually call in the case of an overdose, not necessarily get dinged by police officers. It's also looking at things like policing practices, right? And so when we look at the overdose prevention site, where we have a cop car parked outside all the time, people don't necessarily want to use that service because they see the intimidation that's happening with some officers. And we saw that with Sarah Blythe, where they confiscated a cannabis replacement program. So they have something that I know is safe and easy to use, but the police officers confiscated that because they could. So looking at things like that, we also, I think also looking at it from a housing first strategy as well. Because I think when it comes to health overall, homelessness is definitely an indicator of mental health and also just well-being in general. And so like Jean, our one city also has a plan to build modular houses within the first year, also using a progressive property tax. And just to see the fact that we can do it, it can happen. We've seen modular homes go up within 6 months. We know we can do this, it's just a matter of the money and the will. And then also coming to who's advising the folks that are creating these policies. And so we also think it's important to have an advisory committee at the city, also of users and folks who are experiencing the overdose crisis, and also ensure that they have low barriers to access that. So maybe paying them as well for their time. Because we also have peer networks in Vancouver who are paid to provide their services, their knowledge and information about the drug crisis to experts who are also more highly paid. And so ensuring that City Hall is getting their information directly from people who are being affected.
Thank you. Next question.
I come here as a representative of the Hastings Sunrise community and also as a member of the Hastings Park Conservancy. I would like to direct this to you, Rick. How would you advocate to have park board presence on the community board? That's park board presence. And how would you protect Hastings Park and make it more accessible for the local community?
Well, protecting Hastings Park failed about a century ago. And unfortunately, it's been chopped into just about every purpose except the neighborhood park, which is what it should be. The decision about who serves on the is a city council decision, but it's part and parcel with a larger question about how disrespected Park Board is, at least by the current city council. Because it's a question that's even broader than that. Metro Vancouver Council actually has a parks committee as part of it that deals with the regional parks, that includes like Pacific Spirit Park. But it's a city councilor that sits on that committee, not a park board commissioner. And you would think that the logical person to put on a park committee would be a park board commissioner. So, these things do have to go up the ladder. I think we do need to have that as the park board needs to have a better relationship with city council than they currently enjoy. We're looking at a city council for the last 10 years that is pretending that it is the park board. It's making the decisions about our newest greenway. It's making the decision to put another greenway in the northeast quadrant of Vancouver. It's at the same time that it's cutting the park board's purse strings. It's really a difficult situation. And some people would argue that the way to get around that is to have the same party represented in a majority situation in both bodies. Well, I don't see that happening. All that you end up having is party politics, and whoever that party may be beholden to. And I don't see them being beholden to Hastings Park or anything along those lines. So it's a great question. It's a matter of council coming online and supporting this idea.
Thank you. These will be our last two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Penny Noble, and I heard from somebody up there, and I'm sorry I don't remember who it was, but you mentioned that in this neighborhood, it's one of the most historic neighborhoods in the city, and that you felt that you need to find a way to preserve what's here, including the existing housing stock. And I'm very interested in hearing whoever it was that said that. What would be your ideas for how to do that? And
how could you take those same ideas to the rest of the city that have the same situation of 1,000 demolitions every year of character homes, for example? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. One of the things we have to understand is that there are solutions that work in the city. A lot of these homes here house a number of families because it's a working class neighborhood. What happens there is that they're affordable. In other words, a new home will require a higher mortgage, cost more, so it displaces people. That's just sort of a simplistic way of looking at it. What we have here is actually a very good formula. It's the easiest way to describe it is that we call it invisible density. It's so easy to take a house right now. Do something very small, maybe add another door, or add a little bit to the house, and you don't see it. But you can have a separate suite in there as a secondary suite. That's what we do. It's done over in Kitsilano. It's a great example of RT zoning, multiple family zoning. We don't need to go to a multiple family. The legal definition of multiple family is like a duplex. What that happens is that you have to have firewalls, you have to have all this extra cost added to homes. It doesn't make sense. We've got solutions out there right now, beautiful old homes that are functional, and it adds character, and it's what makes this neighborhood vibrant. It doesn't make sense. We just come up with a wholesale decree that says we're now going to allow these homes to be converted into multiple family homes based on the legal definition of a duplex. So when I hear that, what's going to happen? Well, the least expensive real estate in Vancouver right now happens to be in this neighborhood. And developers come in here, they'll see this place, and they're going to target this place. And they don't think about what's going to happen to people already residing here. The biggest deficiency in the city, there's never been a social impact assessment. Every time we hear of a new development or something they're going to add or change, we never hear about what happens to the residents and the people who are living in that community already. What we have here is a really wonderful relationship. We need the elders, we need the young people. When they talk, when they exchange ideas, that's what builds a community. So this is a great example here. Let's make it work.
Would you? Thank you.
Okay.
Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Matthew Cadges, and I am also running for Parks Board with the Work-Class Party. I live in this neighborhood. And my question is to anyone who would like to field it, but I'd also like to see a show of hands from everybody up there. Currently, as we know, one of the ways to improve neighborhoods is through the CFCs paid by developers to the city. That is when the city doesn't waive them. But those CFCs are used for the exact local area that the developments are occurring in to make those areas nicer. I'd like to know who would be in favor of centralizing those funds and then distributing them to communities based on need and based on what community centers are asking for.
For this question, we'll as requested, we'll just ask for a show of hands.
Who's in favor of centralizing the funds and giving them out on a needs-based basis?
Thank you. We will wrap up the questions for the evening. I would now like to close the forum. I trust that candidates have an opportunity to speak. I will say that it is an extreme privilege for Hastings to have had the opportunity to host this event tonight. I would like to thank all of the candidates and acknowledge and commend them for stepping up to offer their services to the community. I would also like to acknowledge all of the additional candidates who were not able to sit on the panel, but came here today to engage with the public. We trust it is not always an easy thing to do, and the challenge, commitment, and willingness to put your name forth and to stand for election is truly something to be celebrated. We also thank the community and our members for being engaged and for participating actively tonight. Municipal elections can truly impact our direct and daily quality of life. Elected leaders will be empowered to make the critical decisions of our community vitality. So voters, please remember to get out and vote. Advanced voting is from October 10th to 17th, and the official election date is October 20th. Hastings Community Center will be one of the local polling stations for both the advanced polls and on election day. We also would like to encourage people to stay and to meet and have an opportunity to discuss directly their issues with the candidates and those candidates who were not able to sit on the panel for the remaining, for a few minutes. And I would like to take this opportunity to solicit a round of applause to all candidates here tonight and say thank you and good evening.